We're going to basically turn the lens around a little bit here, and instead of focus on what great work is being done at a number of organizations from which you've heard of or from all morning, we're going to turn the lens around and talk about you, okay? And what we're going to do is basically look at how has this industry, this industry, changed, and how are we doing in the measurement and the economic world. Are we growing as a business? Are we shrinking as a business? What's the future look like? And so to help do this presentation, I'd like to get joined by 4 esteemed colleagues. They were not only picked for their good looks, but also for the fact that they truly do lead this industry. Mazen Nahawi is the CEO of Karma. He runs his business out of the Middle East, and which has seen explosive growth around the world over the last, what have you been in business, 15 years, something like that? Okay. Jeremy Thompson is not only the chairman of AMEC, but also was the CEO of Gorkana. Come on up, guys. And oversaw and worked with Cision in the integration of Cision and Gorkana over the last year. Petra Masanova runs as the CEO of Newton Group, and that is the #1 measurement business in Eastern and Central Europe. And finally, we had Kevin Reed from Bell Pottinger. I've said that correctly. You're the chairman of the company, I believe. And basically you're representing here not only the great work your firm does, but we want to bring in the PR agency perspective in terms of this presentation. Make sense so far? Okay, so the basis of this conversation is in and around a survey that many of you participated in. And this survey is the AMEC World Media Intelligence and Business Insights Study. It's been going on for quite some time, and it looks at basically, is this industry growing? And if so, how is it growing? We had a very good response rate this year. It went out to about 110 or so, 106 I guess to be precise, 103, excuse me, CEOs and managing directors of the companies that are in this room. We've got an 80% response rate. That is very good. So this is representative of you. And what we'd like to share with you is what were the results, and then get our panel here of experts to give us some thoughts about them as I try to juggle all these papers. So, if you guys are ready, throw my watch around. See, once you're done being chairman, you become very uncoordinated on top of everything else. Okay, so now I think we all know the industry is growing. In fact, I was reflecting back when Bailey mentioned that this initial summit was in 2009 in Berlin. How many of you were in the room that day? Okay, quite a few. Do you remember how big the room was? I remember the room as roughly the size as maybe from here to that first sort of partition at best. Okay? That was this summit, and I would guess there was maybe a third, a quarter of the people that are in this room right now. A third. And now look what it is. You can barely see the back of the room, particularly at my age, and frankly, we've grown tremendously as an industry. Now, if we look at the survey, we do see a couple of things. First of all, we see that 54% of respondents say the industry is growing, but that's down from 74% last year. We do see that 12% of the respondents in this room predict double-digit growth going for the year ahead. 69% predict single-digit growth. But that double-digit growth number was, 23% last year, down to 12 now. So if you look statically only at this year, you'd go, wow, this is happening. If you look at it in comparison to last year, you sort of go, well, why are the numbers lower? Mazen, you've seen incredible growth in your business. What's going on in the industry?
I think the industry isn't frothy the way it used to be. I think it's growing very quickly.
Frothy?
Mm-hmm. I think
is that like a live word? Frothy?
No. It's like the foam on your cappuccino, if you will. I think the industry is not as lucrative as it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I think you have many more players. I think people think we are in an age of consolidation. I don't actually see that. I think we're in an age of fragmentation. I think we're confusing a lot of M&A activity with consolidation. If you look at the number of companies in our field, there are well over 1,500 companies that we have listed at Karma, and we find many more people are in our field today. And the way they are competing is by competing on price, lower end, more automated basic metrics, which I think is driving down prices and margins. So that froth, if you will, healthy margins, higher top lines and bottom lines are under pressure. And I think that's why you're feeling a little bit of pessimism.
Petra, what word would you use if not frothy for what's going on in this industry right now?
Honestly, I don't know.
You can use frothy if you wanted to.
I don't know what frothy means.
It's something to do with a cappuccino. You have some froth on a hot cappuccino. What do you think is going on in the industry? High optimism, but it's lower than we saw last year.
I think even though we listened to the presentation saying that we shouldn't look at the border, I still think our industry would have some differences locally. So it means that, we see a lot of optimism because like the Central Eastern Europe we are just getting there. So for us, we are just getting from the frothy thing. But I absolutely agree with Mazin. It means that when you look at the number of customers or clients, we are not losing them, but we are getting a lower revenue just on the prices, because the pressure on the price is incredible. And exactly what Mazin was saying is happening in our region means that we are sort of facing a lot of technological innovations, is automatization of the work we do.
Jeremy, what word would you choose?
I'm not sure about what word I would use, David, but I do have a slight advantage, as I seem to be the only member of the panel that's got a copy of the full report.
Oh!
So,
I guess there are perks to being chairman.
Major member benefit, because apparently most members use this to understand industry trends. So, and you need to know what it is you're actually measuring. And one thing you would learn very quickly from this is that most of the survey respondents 60% were measurement vendors, 20% were PR consultancies. Most of them, just over half, were in Western Europe. So I figure, particularly as we're in London, this could be the last summit we have as a European country. There is an awful lot of uncertainty in London and across Europe. We heard two of the first three speakers this morning refer to budgets and budget cuts. Mazen and Petra both talked about the rise of automation. I thought it was great, by the way, to hear Microsoft say that you cannot automate the measurement of sarcasm, which is great, because that means we all have a future. Microsoft and Google will have to wait a little bit longer before they can get into our game. But I think it is, the headlines are, it is still a growing industry, confidence has eroded a little bit, some of that has got to be geopolitical, and I think 2016 will be an interesting year. It will be challenging on many fronts.
Jeremy, you mentioned the sample, and the sample being measurement companies, but also PR agencies. And Kevin, I want to direct this next slide or questions about it to you. One of the things you do see in the survey is really PR agencies coming much more strongly into the measurement discipline. Last year, 5 and 10 saying this is a part of my core offer. This year, 8 and 10, so a jump, and albeit very small sample. This isn't every agency in the world, but it's certainly among some of the bigger agencies, if you will. 66% of respondents saying they're seeing PR agencies enter this field and having businesses around this particular field, as opposed to perhaps relying more on measurement providers instead. Kevin, what are you seeing in the agency world?
Well, I think firstly to say, I think consultancies are taking measurement more and more seriously. It is becoming a more competitive business, but it's not without its challenges. Most PR consultancies are heavily littered with people who are very comfortable looking at classic media and using those particular tools. It's a particularly big challenge to change your habits. People don't like change. PR people now have to carefully balance what classic they're measuring as opposed to social. Equally, they've got to get the right weighting between qualitative and quantitative measures. That really isn't very easy. The pace of change is largely being driven by clients. Clients expect agencies to come up with the right kind of metrics. And I think AMAC has been particularly strong in encouraging those early dialogues between clients and consultancies to work out exactly what you're measuring. And that emanates from having very, very clear and well understood objectives. One other trend which I think is pushing measurement faster and faster is the speed and availability of social data that tells us much more quickly than before whether our messages are landing, whether attitudes and behaviours are changing. Those measures can't just be left to the digital experts. The classic PR experts have to be part of that game, and as a consequence, it is driving up how important measurement is and why it's being taken more seriously. And I can give you numerous examples recently of PR consultancies who recognise that they don't have that know-how in-house, are turning to new types of people, to planners, insight experts, and even partners like AMAC, whose common framework helps us enormously to try and crack this measurement nut.
You know, my company works with you two guys a lot. For a lot of our clients, but also there are plenty of companies, and a number of them have mentioned your companies, work directly with you. How do you guys view, let's say, the evolving relationship between PR agencies and measurement companies? Mazen, why don't you start?
It's a good question. I think you find the agencies which are more innovative want us to help them more with research than analytics. We're doing more back office work in coding individual articles or tweets, and the innovative client wants to really do their own analysis, and they hire very good people to do that. Smaller and medium agencies don't have the ability to bring on good analysts, and they don't have the ability to do the research. So we're finding we're doing most of the research and analytics for a small and medium agency, and more back office work for the bigger ones.
Jeremy, what about you?
Well, obviously, relationships are improving all the time.
Right.
But you know, we're very fortunate to have a very good relationship with Ketchum. I wouldn't say it is like that across the board. It's not unique, but it is it's different. I think that actually the agency audience in this room is symptomatic of the coming together of this industry. If you think about how AMAC has changed in the last 10 years, I remember when I was running Durrance as a media monitoring company, I was not allowed to join AMAC because we weren't, I don't know, intellectual enough, smart enough. And then that changed, and then agencies weren't allowed to join because they were seen as being a competitor. I think we all need each other because, frankly, the reason that AMAC is doing so well, the reason that the raison d'etre for AMAC is to promote measurement and to grow the market for the benefit of everybody, to professionalise the industry and to help us all do a better job of demonstrating to the C-suite that communications, PR, reputation management all really matters. Measurement is the evidence. So I think those relations are improving dramatically, and I think we work with a lot of in-house teams, we work with a lot of agencies, sometimes we work with the two in tandem on different types of projects. So it is certainly improving.
Sure. Let's talk about where the industry is going. And so one of the statistics in the survey is the degree to which companies, respondents, are investing in innovating in some fashion. And is that amount going up or down? You put it together, 76%, I guess it is, of respondents say, yes, the amount I'm spending on innovation, change, growth is increasing. So not only is it high, but it's going up. Petra, what are these innovations? What's next? We have the conference 5 years from now. What are we talking about?
I think it's quite interesting. Newton Media Group is like a 20 years old company. And I was working in different fields for 18 years being a client of Newton Media. from a governmental side, from a big corporation, from a PR agency side, and then I became a CEO of Newton. And I must tell you that, if like 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, somebody asked me what innovation you would expect from the media evaluation company, I would just think about maybe better relationships to the media, or, closer work with us, or better or more investment into the people. And today, with the digitalization of the communication and all the social data we are facing, and maybe even the big data like a research and all the integrated matrix and data we are looking at, I think the innovations more or less are coming from technology point of view. I think technology is inevitable. The organization as ours, being really very deep in media monitoring and media intelligence business, we really need to innovate and look at the technologies. Maybe not that much as the companies being very much focused on social only, but I think it's more about the investment into the human inside of the media data. It means, for example, in our region, we are a company, we are developing our own speech-to-text technology. I'm very happy to hear Microsoft saying it's complicated, because Microsoft is a great company, not doing that great in the Slavonic languages. And it really helps, for example, for the media analysts, to get them more information much faster with the voice-to-text technology. So you can sort of innovate even in human insight, in still providing the job we are and we want to provide, not automatic stuff, but you can innovate. And I think this is what is happening all over the world. The technology is just a winning game. It's getting faster, cheaper. You have more and more, possibilities, options. Just wondering how far that would go, and when exactly we are going to be completely lost in only technology, speed. So I think in 5 years from now, we'll be definitely more technology than today.
Kevin, what's going on innovation-wise when it comes to communications measurement in the PR agency space? Or is anything going on?
I think there are sort of two big things going on. The first is just trying to grapple with a simple question like, how much is 10 likes valued as opposed to a page lead in the Times? Difficult questions. The metrics are different, and we're grappling with that. And secondly, and I think the person talking from Visa this morning really sort of let the cat out of the bag in terms of what the major communication challenge is. She said, I would love to hear from anybody who can give me, if you like, that dashboard that effectively combines the classic and social media measures. In one sense, what I think you as a community, as a bunch of businesses and practitioners is currently missing is your equivalent of the Net Promoter Score. And if I look forward 5 years, I'd love to see some thinking, new metrics, ways of trying to bring that together, and perhaps one day you'll have a net evaluation score.
Cool. Let's talk about the Barcelona Principles. And on everybody's table, there is a printed infographic about the Barcelona Principles, which are for you. And if you'd like a PDF copy of that, you'll be able to get it off the AMEC website as part of the summit. One of the questions in the survey gets at basically, are industry practices shifting relative to those principles? In other words, the principles say, you should be doing this. Are we in fact doing that? And we see some of the numbers, pretty much all of the numbers are going up, ABE numbers are going down, all the things that the principles have been about are happening. I guess, Jeremy, how would you react to it? Is it happening quick enough? Is something missing? Do we need more? I, for example, look at the first bar and I go, how can only, 42% of clients set goals before they measure? Like, how would you know what to measure then if you don't say what you're trying to do? But I don't know, how did you interpret this data? I get a little confused about it, honestly.
I think it's mixed. I mean, I think the good news is pretty much most of the numbers are improving. So we're obviously doing the right things. I think most people in the survey, also over 70%, said they wanted further education. Well, I think we can see why. They clearly still need it. But the good news, the PRCA put out a story last week saying more people are now using the Barcelona Principles than AVEs, which I thought was intriguing. Not quite the same thing, but we're obviously making some progress. And I think that historically the industry, both the measurement vendors and the PR consultancies, have wanted to sort of conjure up and protect some sort of secret sauce, a magic formula. And I think now most realise that the route to growth and the route to professionalisation is to have some standard principles, practices, frameworks, benchmarks, to all adopt those and then apply our value add in the advice that we give on the back of all of that. And I think it's interesting to hear you saying, Kevin, that we need to do more to demonstrate results, and you're looking for some sort of net evaluation score. I think some will be horrified to think there's going to be a single replacement for the AVE, but clearly people still want to be able to demonstrate value in a clear, succinct fashion for CFOs, CEOs. The framework that we're going to unveil tomorrow, I think, should go some way to answering many of those questions. When we relaunched Barcelona Principles, when you relaunched them last year, a lot of people were saying, well, that's great, but what about the practice? The framework will be, the integrated framework that Richard and Lewis PR and the team will launch tomorrow will be the practice that will help those principles come alive. So we're doing a lot of stuff. I think it's getting better.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the goal number in particular, setting goals first, having a tool like that integrated framework that Richard and team has developed will really, basically, hopefully the time this survey is done next year, that number ought to be off the charts, because here's a great tool that helps to do that. Let me ask you a question, Mazen. I was if I found one thing in this survey kind of puzzling, I thought when it came to the inclusion of social media in measurement programs, I thought we'd see a chart that sort of just kept going up and up and up, and it was eventually going to hit 100%. On the other hand, you looked at this data for the last, 6 years, and it basically peaked, 3 years ago, and has just stayed there. Yet we think of social media and digital, that's the coolest and the greatest and our future, but it isn't. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a very interesting slide, and it kind of ties into the AVE slide as well. I think we're doing a good job at educating the market, but I also think AVEs and their decline are heavily influenced by the decline in print media as well. It makes me wonder how much of that is part of the equation. Similarly with social media, there is saturation. The number of app downloads for Twitter and so on are actually a lot lower than last year. There is saturation in the number of people who are on these major platforms. And there's a question about how effectively our people, communications people, are actually using these platforms to do well. So I think there's a saturation point from a platform level, but there's an effectiveness and planning problem when it comes to actually being active and reaching the audiences on these platforms and doing a good job on them.
Kevin?
Just one observation, and I think anyone who's been tracking social media over any period of time knows its chops and changes, and the speed with which new entrants come in and grow can be very rapid. But what we've reached is possibly not a saturation point, but almost like a sort of social overload. We get so much data, we're not quite sure what to do with all of it, and there's a kind of pause happening, and we're recalibrating, and we're rethinking about what is and isn't useful.
I think just to add to that, going back to the investment and innovation point, the data in the full report will tell you that 2 of the 3 top investment areas are in data sources and data capture. So I think there's, clearly we've got a lot of work still to do, but that might answer this question.
Great. Let's take one more bit of data from the survey and ask you guys to comment on it, and then take about 5 minutes of questions from the audience about what they've heard so far for anybody up here. Last little bit, the role of AMEC. Okay? The role of this AMEC, think of AMEC as this room, this community, and really embodied by its chairman, by its CEO. And basically when asked the question, what should AMEC be doing? The answer is about as crystal clear as could possibly be. It's around educating, training, etc. This is one example of that question. There's another question in terms of, should AMEC be focused on educating the PR marketplace about measurement? 92%, pretty much everybody in this survey say yes, education is important. And so to start with, Mr. Chairman, like education around what? What should AMEC be educating around?
Well, our mission is to educate the market around around principles and best practice, in order to dispel some of the myths, counter some of the things that we've seen in some of the results today, to get people working more consistently, more professionally, to get the C-suite noticing the work that we're doing, because we can actually tell them the value of it. So that's what we're trying to do. We are trying to harness the wonderful power of this room and this industry around a kind of common mission and a common voice. And by doing that, we will hopefully next year and in years to come see growth and optimism increasing again, because I think that is one of the biggest challenges we face, and you and Kevin will be better placed to speak to this, but we get the sense that the PR industry is at a crossroads, that there is in certain pockets a lack of optimism, concern about the future, fear about integration, convergence, digital, global, all of these big issues that get discussed at PR conferences. Our role is to answer one of those questions, and that's around measurement.
Petra, what should you're a growing and evolving part of the world where you operate in Eastern and Central Europe. Where should AMEC as an educator play an important role in your environment?
I think it's very similar to what Jeremy was saying. I think it is education, and I know it sounds a bit banal, sometimes you say education and then nobody knows what it really means. I think in our case, the AMEC's role, the education role, would be really to measure properly, to look at the quality, not just, the automatic quantity. Be really very careful about combining the data, not, putting apples and pears to one bucket and trying just to mix the data together and analyze it. So to use the proper methods. Also because from the Newton's perspective, the international business is really growing because the PR agencies are consolidating and they are looking at more markets, not only local markets. So we need to be comparable and on the same boat with everybody else. So it means that if we measure from the side, I don't know, if we work for Microsoft in Central Eastern Europe, the measurement should be on the same level as the measurement in UK or whatever other market. So I think the education would go more for not like kind of courses and trainings, but would be more on really learning by doing, showing the best practices, being able to share and being able to really introduce something what is working and is really able to evaluate properly. And I think this is very important because we are still facing a lot of different methods, different looking at the data, different ways of doing analytics and combining the data. So from my perspective, that would be really using the best practices and having, if not one, so let's say several very clear guidelines how to do this.
Cool. We got a few minutes left. Let's open it up for questions for our panelists. Yes, Tom. Or Thomas. Is that you? Yes. Please, right there in the middle. Oh, you need a microphone.
Thank you. Thomas Stöckler from LexisNexis. I'm a little bit puzzled about this observation of lack of froth combined with social media having plateaued over the last 3 years. It's not an observation that I would share based on other data and also based on personal experience talking to clients and working with suppliers in the social analytics space. When I look at trend drivers around image recognition, for example, companies driving deeper into video recognition, harvesting social media to understand behavioral drivers, going into segmentation, all this fascinating stuff that I think sits maybe on the fringes of our industry and is therefore not sort of fully recognized because we feel more comfortable still operating in monitoring and evaluation. I think where the real growth opportunities lie is being more confident and moving out into those sort of analytics areas that sit more in marketing than in PR. I'm not sure that's a question. Maybe it's just
Yeah, so Mazen, why don't you take a shot at that? You got the froth thing, so I wasn't sure what he asked, but you go ahead.
Well, in reference to froth, what I meant really by that was margins are under pressure. Okay, that's what I mean by that statement. I think you're right in saying that we should be moving into new areas. And if I were to think about, AMEC and its purpose moving forward, I'd tie it into your question. I think there's according to Burton Taylor, a $3 billion industry that we are part of. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to move into a $30 billion industry. But to do that, you need a name for your industry. We don't have a name that is commonly accepted for what we do. And measurement does not exist in a vacuum. It has database information, influencer discovery, monitoring. We need to establish media intelligence as what we actually do, or if you'd like, communications insight. We need a name that represents who we are, what we do, that will allow us to broaden our offering to the market. I think PR companies are a wonderful partner, but there's no reason why we shouldn't be delivering to every part of the client enterprise. No reason why we shouldn't be going to marketing, working with IT. The other day, one of our RFP responses, we saw competition from Oracle for the first time. And they actually put in a bid to win a client in Angola, out of all places. So we believe very much that we have to go beyond the narrow scope that we have been working in order to re-establish the high margins which were characteristic of the industry for the past 100 years, if you will, and spread it across new markets and every part of the client's enterprise.
Great. I believe we're right at time, so let's give a big round of applause for our panelists. Thank you guys very much.